This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, your media police post. Brought to you by the Fort Hall School of Government, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 14th of November, 2019, and I am 2J.
I am JM.
And I am GK, and in case you missed the headlines, here they are.
Yes.
In the Standard, handshake MPs ask RUTO to quit. In the Star, Stowaway saga takes new turn over identity. And in Daily Nation, man's family denials point to a cover-up. Interesting departure from yesterday. But let's begin with who's
Politics.
asking my deputy president
Wow.
to quit.
The handshake MPs,
Yes.
right? These are the MPs of some Jubilee MPs, some ODM MPs,
Yeah.
who are now calling on RUTO to quit because RUTO has come out publicly to defend himself and, you know, basically say the violence that happened in KIBRA was totally uncalled for.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
orchestrated
Yeah.
by these MPs, and so
Yeah, they were
what
also
the handshake MPs are now saying is, look, don't direct your
Anger.
your anger to the appointees of the president, namely the cabinet secretary for interior and I think and his PS.
Yeah.
Direct it at
the president, yeah,
or
instead
just
of
quit
going,
altogether,
yeah, instead of going
bashing the
against,
government.
government initiatives like
Yeah.
BBI.
And if he were to ever take my advice, I would say stay put. You cannot fight the establishment from the outside.
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
much easier to be in there.
Yeah.
And he's
You're more
right.
comfortable
He
in
has
government.
every right to be there. When you guys voted for Uhuru Kenyatta,
Yeah.
We voted for him.
He was
But I
right
think
there
part
as
of this
well.
also comes from his recent Twitter tirade. He's becoming quite Trumpian with the way he,
Yes.
anything comes out against him, he's quick to tweet
But
and
you know
defend
what?
himself.
And I totally applaud it because you know what? Get ahead of the narrative. Let
Yeah.
nobody else dictate what you're thinking, what you're, you know.
Yeah, it's
and
true. But I'm
has to
asking,
be-
is it smart or is it stupid? I don't know.
Yeah,
Smart.
I'm not
Sometimes I read
convinced.
them and I giggle. I'm like, is he okay?
I think he should have just retreated to a corner to lick his wounds,
No.
recover, and then, you know, close that chapter.
He was not in KIBRA
Because-
to win, people.
Yeah,
He
we did
proved
see
it.
that.
That's the point. He
Yeah.
had nothing to lose, and so by coming out this way to defend himself so aggressively,
Yeah.
it looks like actually he
had
had something to
something
lose,
to
which really he didn't. But anyway, what do we think of headline? Do we-
Well, we do have a three-part criteria.
Yeah.
Jen. We ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And is it thoughtful or just plain lazy?
I think it's topical. I think it's thoughtful. It's a
Yeah.
good headline. I like it to the point. You know what the story is going to tell you.
Yeah, so
So
we
we
can
park
park
it.
it for now.
Yes.
All right.
So in the Star, I think we can do Star and Daily Nation together.
Yes.
So basically, yesterday, our winning headline from the Standard,
Yes.
the Kenyan who fell from London skies,
Yeah.
was reporting the story from Sky News.
Yeah.
And so Sky News has sort of dropped this bomb on us, and Kenyan media has picked it
Picked up, finally.
Yes. However, there are now
There's a twist.
there's a twist because the parents who the Sky News investigator
Yeah.
had gone to talk to are now like, well, the picture is
It is our son,
but
but
that's not his name.
His
So-
name is not Paul Manyasi.
His name is Cedric Shibonje, or however you
Yeah,
say it.
honestly,
right?
this story has confused
And
me.
our son didn't fall from the London sky.
Yes, he's
in
alive.
prison. He's alive and in prison.
My
Yeah.
So
goodness.
the nation, they went and called the prisons, and they said, "Is there a Cedric Shibonje or a Paul Manyasi
Yeah.
there?" They
Yeah.
said, "Not any of those on our records," which then points to this
Cover up, yeah.
Why were they so sure
Yeah.
to the Sky News investigator, and what has thus changed?
Because that's quite strange. I think that everybody who had spoken to the Sky News reporters have now recanted their stories.
Exactly.
The girlfriend who said, "This is my boyfriend," she's now said, "I
Yeah.
don't know this man."
Yeah.
The same as a family, they said that that is not our son.
Yeah.
And
our
still,
son is
yeah,
Cedric,
KAA has said they do not have an employee by that name. And also
Yeah.
Colnet, the cleaning company, has
Yeah.
also said they do not have an employee
and they
by
came
that
out
name.
with
So what's happening
statements
here?
yesterday.
Yeah.
So
Okay, if we were to ask the qui bono question,
Yeah,
qui
who
bono question
benefits?
asks who benefits,
Yeah.
but also who stands to lose.
Yeah, so
right?
I think part of this is, I think what the Daily Nation alludes to is the fact that JKIA recently got a 78% safety record score.
Yeah.
And they attained a category 1 status. So I think part of this is that these become blemishes on the record of the
airline,
airport.
of the airport.
So I think that with them denying any of these stories, I think it's in order to keep themselves looking clean.
And on the
They don't
flip
want it to
side,
go on
though,
record.
what would Sky's intention be with fabricating such
whole story?
So it's also, on the other hand,
None of this
Sky
makes
have
sense.
to benefit? I mean, fine,
Yeah.
maybe they put together that circumstantial evidence,
Mm-hmm.
but still they shed some light on the issue.
Yeah.
So my question is, why the turnaround? Why did the family lie to the white person?
I think
Money?
No, I think the family actually told the
truth to
Yeah.
Sky.
right?
Yeah.
But then afterwards they were approached by
Yeah.
who God
So
knows
maybe
who,
the pressures that be...
Yeah.
you know,
The interesting thing for me is that stowaway stories like this happen all the time. They happen in the US. There was also a man who traveled from India to London. There was a
Yeah.
case from Cape Town to London as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
It happens all the time. So I don't
Yeah.
think that JKIA or KAA rather need to be
Mm.
so concerned about it. It's quite regular.
It is quite, for as long as there's been transport from across
Yes.
the world, there have been people
Yeah.
trying to find
Sneak
ways.
in. Yeah, but this
So what do
this
we
turn-
say about our headlines? Do we want to keep, I like the Daily Nation,
I like
man's
the-
family denials point to a cover-up.
Yeah, I like the Daily Nation too. It takes us
Same
straight
here.
to the
To the
juicy
points?
bits. I
Yeah,
think the
very
Star.
juicy.
So are we tossing
Toss the
handshakes?
star.
I think, yeah, we toss a handshake and we
All
toss
right,
the star.
so give it to the nation.
There we go. Daily Nation gives us our winning headline.
Fantastic.
Onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Sorry. Where we also have a three-part criteria that we use. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy?
Yes.
Victor Dula of the Daily Nation.
Of the Daily Nation.
Wow, so here we have a sinking Nairobi County ship in red and black. And on it is City Hall, but it says City Hole.
Oh.
And there's someone yelling SOS, and it says swim or sink.
Or sink. I personally didn't think that the sink or swim or
Was
sink needed to
necessary.
be there,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
as it is,
Yeah.
that is an accurate reflection of, I think, how
Yeah.
the county is being
Is
run.
operating.
Exactly.
And in the BBI constitutional referendum that will happen, I think we ought to reconsider.
All right.
We ought to reconsider a constitutional amendment reverting Nairobi County to the national government.
Yeah, or make
So
it
that
just a
is-
metropolis. Like you are
Precisely.
just the city.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So that we
I
can
know.
sort this city out.
Yeah, I know. So I think part of the context here is that people have been saying that Sonko is hardly in his office.
Yeah.
And as we know, it's been 2 years since he had a deputy governor that he's really not trying
Yeah.
to fill that
so we
space.
have no deputy
Absolutely.
governor.
Yeah.
Igade didn't even tell us how traumatized he was. He just ran off. And then the speaker has not
is-
been office also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The
Under
MCAs have
siege.
barred her from...
So Sonko
The-
is just traumatizing people.
The leader of, I think, the majority was being kicked out earlier this week.
Yeah, I know. They had pepper
Something
spray
like
and some
that.
weird...
Yeah. And it's a shame for us because
It really
Nairobi
is.
in the region is known as this metropolis.
Yeah,
right?
we are.
So how
Yeah.
can we
Yeah.
just
We
let
can't
it go
subject
to...
it
I
to
know.
politics of this kind.
Yeah, we're embarrassing ourselves.
I think it's a good
I like
cartoon.
it. We
otherwise.
Great cartoon, that's true.
Can
All right,
pocket for
next
now.
up we
and
have...
in the Star.
So Star, we have a new artist.
Ooh,
Oh yeah, it's Celeste.
Yeah,
Yeah, welcome to Celeste.
Celeste.
Yeah, hi Celeste.
A nice name.
Yeah, so in this cartoon, we have a police officer's hat that is smeared with blood, and it says witness, judge, and jury. And underneath the hat, there are some police officers who are beating someone. And underneath it, it also says anti-demons, traitors unit.
Yeah.
So I think this is in reference to the video that came out
Yeah.
of some 4 police officers who were seen beating a student quite violently.
Yeah.
So I think
Jake
only
White
3 have been identified, and the 4th is yet to be identified.
Yeah.
It was a horrible story. Honestly, I think police brutality, it's not just in the US. I
Yeah.
mean, it's creeping over.
Yeah, and I think Celeste is trying to tell us that the same people who are witnessing, who are going to judge, and who are going to sort of give the punishment
Yeah,
are the same people.
people.
And are they going to be sincere in
They're
their
not gonna be
duties?
just.
Yeah.
Yeah, sad
I like
story.
it, but
I like it.
a bit out of date.
That is very true, yeah.
Yeah.
So we toss that.
Finally.
And what do we have in
In the
the
standard,
standard?
Gado.
Gado. So here we have Drogan and Trump walking away, presumably from a press conference that they recently had in the US. And Trump says, I will take care of that. And this is, I think, referring to the bloody footsteps
Of the Kurds,
of
yeah.
the Kurds.
The Kurdish fighters,
Yeah, Kurdish fighters.
Precisely.
Yeah.
In Syria?
Yeah, in Syria, yeah.
Yeah, but the
yeah.
Turkish president perceives them as terrorists.
Exactly,
Fighting
yeah.
in this region.
So there's 2 parts to this story. The first part is Turkey going into Syria to flush out the Kurds, which
Yeah.
would have left ISIS fighters who were in prisons exposed and able to get out. But then the second part is that the House of Representatives last month passed a sanction against Turkey over the purchase of Russian military defense weapons. So I think it's those two things.
And there's a bucket written quid pro quo, a can with a bucket next to it, and you know that thing that will be used to wipe
the blood,
footsteps. And I think that's in reference to what you're saying, Julie, that if Turkey decides to get the weapons perhaps exclusively from the US, then Trump is all too glad
to look the other way,
wipe off all that blemish.
I mean, maybe he'll be impeached. We'll see what happens.
Maybe.
So if we choose between the three cartoons,
I like the sinking ship of the.
Can I instantly throw this one?
Yeah.
That's very quickly.
So we have our winning cartoon.
Yes.
From Dula. We have a double win there.
Double win.
So what is our final thought?
Let me grab my book today. Yes. And now our final thought, brought to you today by I Accuse the Press, an insider's view of the media and politics in Africa by Philip Ochieng, and was written in 1992. So Philip Ochieng is he's actually one of the most celebrated journalists in Kenya with a career that spans over 35 years. So if I just read from the back, he was editor-in-chief of the Kenya Times, he worked for the Daily Nation, he worked for Uganda's Sunday Times, the Dar es Salaam Daily News, and then he was actually the best-selling writer of the Kenyatta Succession, which I believe we've covered before.
Fantastic. He wrote it with Joseph Karemi.
Exactly. Fantastic writer. So I think if we were just to summarize what this book is asking, he's asking why freedom of the press, but as defined by the West, is so difficult or was so difficult for the third world to attain. So just for a bit of context, this book is both looking at Africa as newly independent nations, but also locally as Kenya during the times of Moi. And so in my opinion, I saw Ochieng answer this question of freedom of the press in 4 key ways. So I think the first thing he looks at is the imbalance of information flows. So he talks about in this book that in the 1970s, there was a global call for change of media representation of the developing world to make global media more representative and more equal. So he says that African leaders were pandering to the West through their media outlets. But he also says that Western journalists continue to perpetuate the notion that only the white race is capable of peace, orderliness and development. And Ochieng actually calls it a crime against humanity. So there was this movement that was happening in the 1970s called the New International Information Order. And it basically called for a couple of things. It said that the means of communicating information are concentrated in a few countries. I think they said information was held in 4 media corporations that sat in the West.
Wow.
He also said that this situation perpetuates the colonial era of dependence and domination. It confines judgments and decisions on what should be known and how it should be made known to the hands of very few. And so the second thing he talks about is the issues that were faced or caused by the local media. So a lot of the local media would actually engage in self-censorship. So editors would refuse to criticize the government for fear of being arrested. And then the other thing, which I think goes hand in hand, was then just general censorship by the government. So African leaders at that time had this obsession with their image abroad. So they were very concerned with how the West perceived them. And I think it was mostly because of, access to financial aid.
Linking into foreign money.
Exactly. So in the book, he says, it's not the absence of constitutional guarantees that is responsible for our crippling attacks on the press, but rather it is the shaky and economic and cultural grounds that our political system stands on, which was paved for by colonialism and is maintained by neo-colonialism. And I thought that was so interesting. And then the last point, which was my favorite, is societal advancement. And so he argues in the book that freedom is being demanded by Western human rights organizations that it's only possible in a society where the majority has been freed from the worries of just general everyday life, so that they can spend most of their time on abstract ideas. So he says that until we are able to stop worrying about where will I get food from, how will I send my shelter, how will I send my kids to school, at that time, we were not equipped to start thinking and philosophizing about what press freedom means. So this idea of class was imposed upon us by the colonialists. And so trying to have freedom of the press before even understanding who we are as a society, you can't have the chicken or the egg, like which one should come first.
Just before you go, Faith, there's a political scientist, I think his name is Michael Barton, who says no bourgeoisie, no democracy. Right?
Exactly.
If you don't have that middle class you're talking about, you're not going to have any democracy. And I think it's the same thing with the freedom of the press.
Exactly.
If you don't have this bourgeoisie, forget about freedom of the press.
Of the press, it doesn't exist, it can't.
We tell you, you believe it. So he writes a chapter on technical know-how and technical know-why. And he says that the big problem with African press at the time is that they didn't have the technical know-how. So basically, he tells us a story. In 1977, then Minister Mwai Kibaki, he's like, listen, every time I look at a Kenyan newspaper, one notices a lack of information on the part of writers because of lack of background material. He said that economic reports were superficial, sketchy, misinformed, and editors were furious, right? So Standard wrote, Nation, everybody was writing their responses back. And Ocheng proposes that the problem is not even the know-how, it's also the know-why. So you have a lot of these journalists who didn't have the proper skills, and they would their reporting model was basically, we won't give you the context of the story. We just sort of copy pasted from these four main media houses that were abroad. And then instead of, they would prefer these, what he calls spot news. So they would make casual relations about why something may have happened, but they would focus on the very, what we call juicy parts, you know, the salacious murder, you know, the things that are catchy versus the things that are actually important. And so Kibaki really took issue with this and went to town on them. And he says, African press, this is Kibaki, African press behaves at times as if anything that is fashionable in Europe is fashionable here. And so Ocheng says that there was a crisis of what you called the international information order. And he says that they made third world political tragedies look like it was our fault. So we felt guilty. It was our inability to rule ourselves, and this is why...
No context.
There was no context, no historical background or explanation as to why these things were happening or even repeating themselves in our present day history, right? And so to Ocheng, the solution was better trained and better paid journalists. However, he was like, if training is still going to happen in these Western institutions, then how do we break apart from the power structure of the world? How we receive information that usually was distorted, right? So good was West, bad was Africa, you know, or communism and whatnot. And so to Ocheng, he said, press freedom requires not only the constitutional guarantee that you talked about, but the existence of people with skill, know-how, and people who are well informed of Africa's history, traditions, and cultures, so that they can be able to tell us better stories.
Absolutely. So this book was written 27 years ago. Has anything changed?
Has anything changed?
I don't know.
The crazy thing, and the crazy thing is, he said, for us to have press freedom, it must belong to Kenyans and Africans. And we still have some major media
I'm seeing a lot of things that still exist.
I would say the education system, in terms of how journalists are trained, leaves a lot to be desired. So you know, they become they become jacks of all trades instead of specialists in one area. And if you go to a place like London, the Financial Times, before you can comment on a financial story, you
be a financial expert.
You are a financial expert first, and then you're a journalist. Or
you have the know-how
on that. Precisely.
So true.
And I think the new CS is going to scrap journalism.
Please
I think
scrap
is a good idea. You know. But anyway, so in this book, one of the other things that the author talks about was the attempt to establish a free press, and a free press here meaning free from foreign ownership, by and free from interference from the imperial powers and the colonizers, right? And he gives the story of one of Kenya's most prolific and renowned journalists, a guy called Hilary Ngweno, and his account of how Ngweno attempted to become East Africa's first indigenous media mogul, but ultimately he failed, right? And so he tells us why he failed. In a nutshell, he basically spread himself too thin. Right? So in '64, Ngweno graduated from Harvard. He came back and he became the first indigenous editor-in-chief of the Nation, what is today the Daily Nation. He quit in 1966. About a decade later, he sets up the Weekly Review in '75. But then in '70, and it does really well. But in '76 already, he sets up another very demanding publication, a weekly one, known as the Rainbow. It was a children's educational weekly magazine. A year later, he launches the Nairobi Times. The Nairobi Times was supposed to be like the Observer of London or the Sunday Times of London. So again, very time consuming. And meanwhile, he's doing the other two. The year later, he bought like two printing presses.
I'm understanding why the story ended the way it did.
So that he can print his own publications. And meanwhile, this whole time he was being financed by government of Kenya, the National Bank and Industrial Development Bank. So in Ocheng's words, he puts it thus: Ngweno would venture into anything which may detain his fancy.
Oh gosh.
So basically, anything that detained his fancy,
He was doing
went
it.
Like,
after
I'm
it.
there.
Yeah.
Absolutely, which reminded me, just as I close,
Yeah.
of a lesson that we draw from the Bible,
Hold on.
right?
Cue the organs.
about the perils of spreading yourself too thin.
Yeah.
Right, there's a story of Jesus visiting a lady called Martha, and so Jesus comes to Martha's house, and Martha's sister Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus, and Jesus is talking, and Mary is listening, and she's in awe of what she's hearing, and Martha gets upset. Martha's like, "Look, there's so much work to do," and Mary is just sitting at your feet. Jesus, can you tell her to please get up and come help me? And this is what Jesus says. You are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one.
Yeah.
And the lesson there is grow where you are planted, right?
Yeah.
Focus on one thing. After if you're doing business, for example, as Hillary Ngweno was doing, he did a really good job with a weekly review.
Fantastic.
If he had stuck to just weekly review for like 5-10 years, he would have become the media mogul that he could have been. But if you approach yourself every 2 minutes going on to the next business venture, no
where
rules,
will you succeed?
no success.
I think it's do one thing and do it really well.
Do it well.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Oh, fantastic. So on a day where we had
Double win.
double win,
Yep.
Daily
Man's Family
Nation.
Denial's point to our cover-up, and Dula's cartoon. I want to leave you with this. In the end, Ocheng teaches us that we must exploit all the loopholes existing in the present national and international power system for information. We must write as many economic and cultural facts about our societies, about our countries, so that we can educate people on the power system and the choice architects. There's a slogan that says, each one, teach one. So if you can teach 2, 10, 300, 1,000, teach them, right?
They should be watching us, Fifth Estate.
Yes, as we damage ignorance.
Yes.
Precisely.
So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also find us on TV. We are on GoTV, Pang Free to Air, and Star Times. Have a good evening.